Let's talk running backs. Let's talk wide backs too, because we're talking rushing statistics. Who on the 49ers roster will exceed or maybe decline from their production in 2021 when we're looking ahead at their 2022 stats? That is coming up right now.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker with you at BD Peacock, at Eric_Crocker. Thanks for making Locked On 49ers your first listen right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm still working on my new studio. As you can see, I got my sound panels behind me. I think there's less echo than there was yesterday. I don't have my full setup yet. It's gonna be dialed in. It's gonna be looking good. Lighting's gonna be better. But we're getting there. We're getting there step by step here, Croc. And you are, I believe, not at your grandma's house today. Maybe your brother's house. It looks a little bit different in the background. There's something over your shoulder though that I can't really place. It's a little too small on my screen right now. Some folks might notice that, but that's what it looks like to me might be a bad look. So we'll see what the listeners have to say about that. At Eric_Crocker. There we go. That's for those of you on YouTube, and shout out to those of you who are audio only, maybe listening to this podcast on your way to work. We appreciate you. We love you, but you should go check out the YouTube podcast as well. Maybe subscribe there.
Shout out to all the YouTube subscribers and listeners. Y'all are active, and we posted a video talking about quarterback stats the last podcast episode, and a lot of interaction and some interesting comments as well about that whole thing. So one guy in particular feels like
so
not a big fan of Trey Lance.
I've seen a couple. I saw a projection from I gotta find it here on YouTube or on Twitter. And on Twitter, there was a user that said, and here's the thing is the stats weren't crazy he was projecting. It was something like 4,000 yards passing with 64% completion percentage and 600 yards rushing. And it's totally reachable for Trey Lance. But that would be one of, if not the best statistical seasons ever for a 49ers quarterback. That's what's crazy. Like he could be not even at his ceiling and put up some pretty crazy statistics. So that's what's nuts about Trey Lance, because Jimmy Garoppolo's been right there, right under 4,000 yards. And if he was healthy last year for 17 games, he would have had a 4,000 yard season. And that's top 3 ever season for a 49ers quarterback.
Right. And Trey Lance, for him to come in and do it as a rookie, we'll see. 57.8 or whatever it is, completion percentage as a rookie. We'll see, how he improves on that. Our guy in the comments there thinks he's going to be about 64%. So that's a decent little jump, I would say. And, maybe I guess if you look at what he did against Houston and extrapolate that over a full season, or at least feel like he's going to come somewhere close to that. He completed 70% of his passes in that game. So I don't think anyone is expecting him to do that over an entire season. But I could see if you're like, you know what, he's not going to do as bad as his overall rookie year, but also not going to be as good as his best game, somewhere in the middle. And that would be right around 64%.
I mean, he'll have better games. Out of 17 games, he's going to have a better game than his best game last year. You know what I mean?
Right.
But what will his average be? What would that look like? And how often is he going to be allowed to throw? Because I think the 49ers are going to run a lot, which means there's going to be a lot of opportunity for these guys to earn rushing yards. And when I'm looking at Elijah Mitchell's stats from 2021, and one of the things we're doing right now is kind of going over under versus last year's stats, right? And for rookies, it doesn't really work. For Trey Lance, it didn't really work because, he played 2 games. He's going to play 17 games, I think, next year, hopefully, knock on wood. He's healthy and he's going to be the starter. So what's that going to look like? But Elijah Mitchell, as a rookie last year, he started 10 games. He had 963 yards. And before, if you asked me at pick 92 in the 2022 NFL draft, if I would go over under on Elijah Mitchell's running stats, 963 yards from last year, I would say over easily. And then at pick 93, the 49ers drafted a running back. And so I don't know what to think about Elijah Mitchell. Is that more a statement on him? Is it a statement more on maybe running back B, the AB, is it going to be just a straight up committee for the 49ers? Is it more of a statement on Sermon? So drafting a running back in round 3 and a bigger back who's a very different style of running back than Elijah Mitchell made me pause on that. And 963 yards is some nice production. And if Elijah Mitchell came into this year as just the straight up starting running back for the 49ers, I would have no problem saying he's a 1,000-yard back. He's going to blow 963 out of the water. But now I'm not so sure. But I know the 49ers are going to run the ball a lot. And I still think right now he's their best running back, right? So I still think I want to take the over, but I feel less confident about it now than I did before the draft.
I only feel less confident about it because I feel like I think it's bad value to draft an insurance policy in the 3rd round at the running back position specifically. So in my head, it's like, well, there's no way they drafted this guy just to be a spellback or just to be an injury insurance. They must have some big plans for him. So if that's the case, then, yeah, we have to go with the under for Elijah Mitchell. But if you are saying that it's just an insurance policy, then I say you go with the over. I mean, Elijah Mitchell, he ran very well. And if there's any chance he improves even slightly above what he did last season, I mean, that's 1,000 yards easily, right? Easily. We're talking about a guy who missed, 4 games due to injury and still had just shy of 1,000 yards. So you give him a full season, and we also have to remember, it's not 16 games anymore, it's 17 games. So you give him that extra game. I mean, you're just even more likely to reach 1,000 yards. So, but I have to believe that they have bigger plans for Ty Davis Price, even though I don't think so. But that's what they're telling me by drafting him where they did. So I'd say Elijah Mitchell we're going to go with the under there.
So Elijah Mitchell, he only played 11 games. So he missed 6 games last year. He started 10 of his 11 games, and he averaged 4.7 yards per carry, which is for a number 1 running back is a very high number because the more rushes you get, the more that number comes down. We'll talk about Deebo Samuel's ridiculous yards per carry in a minute here. But Elijah Mitchell averaged 4.7 yards per carry. I'm going to my calculator here because I want to get this right. And so 87.5 yards per game. And that's counting one of the games where he didn't start. That's
about, let me guess, 1,400 yards. You let me know, but
it's 1,487.
Oh, look at that.
I mean, I would have no problem saying if the 49ers didn't draft another 3rd round running back, I would say Elijah Mitchell's 1,200 plus yards
easily.
Right. And he was good. He was so good in Kyle Shanahan's system. That's what surprises me about the Ty Davis Price thing. So,
okay. So yes, no, he was good.
4.7 yards per carry. That's
no.
Christian McCaffrey's 4.7 yards per carry, right? Christian McCaffrey's like, please allow me. I haven't looked. I'm gonna look it up right now. I bet Christian McCaffrey's career yards per carry is below 4.7.
I would bet if you asked Elijah Mitchell, he would tell you that he left a lot of yards on the field. So I get it, 4.7 yards, and that is awesome. I believe that things were blocked up for him to do even better than that. Now, they're awesome. I'm not going to complain about a running back averaging 4.7 yards a carry and almost 100 yards a game. But you could see how things were blocked up and maybe not seeing things a certain way. And is this the 49ers, drafting Ty Davis Price? Is that them saying, well, yeah, you did well, but man, there's even a little bit more. And just in case you can't get that little bit more, we're going to draft somebody who we believe might be able to either do that or complement what you can't do in a different way. Because that was one thing that jumped out to me about Ty Davis Price. I thought his vision of just understanding when to put his foot in the ground. He was more of an inside zone runner than an outside zone runner like Elijah Mitchell is. But just the vision of it, I thought he had a very good feel for it.
Some subtlety, feel.
The blocks,
Yeah.
understanding how to set up the blocks, understanding how to run off of guys, but put his foot in the ground, get north. And when something was blocked up and it was there, I mean, that was the thing that jumped out to you, right? Like, man, that LSU offensive line, which I think it feels like they all got drafted, but man, that LSU offensive line, and they're creating some huge holes. I think part of that was him understanding how to read the blocks well and get the most out of it with whatever that was. And I thought that was something that Elijah Mitchell could improve on. I thought he got better throughout the year on it, but still, there's some yards. I bet he'd tell you, yeah, I left a lot of yards out there on the field.
There's really different running backs. So in one way, I can see how they would say, okay, these two running backs are going to pair really well together, and I would say absolutely. But and I pulled it up right here, and I said, what did I say? Christian McCaffrey's career rushing average below 4.7. Ooh, that's close. Okay, we're going to talk about that next. We'll talk about where we think Elijah Mitchell's at. We'll have to talk about where the wideback Deebo Samuel is going to be in his rushing, because he only became sort of the wideback halfway through the year. So even if he's dialed back on that, if he's that even half of that for a full year, does that still mean he's going to be, have better rushing stats than he did last year? Jeff Wilson, Trey Sermon, JaMychal Hasty. We could even talk Kyle Juszczyk if you want. And of course, the rookie Ty Davis Price projecting the 49ers rushers in 2022. But let's talk a little bit here, Croc, about Rock Auto. And Croc, I haven't told you this story yet, but driving to the Bay Area from my old home in Davis, the very last load we were driving, just the last few boxes in our car, it's me, my wife, and my son. We're driving down the road, and there was some construction in the left lane, bunch of cones lined up. One of those cones just happened to be right in the middle of the left lane. And there's too late. I'm not going to swerve. Boxes in the car. My son's in the car. There's cars everywhere. I can't swerve, so I hit this cone. The cone bounces up into the wheel well and knocks the fender, like the little fender guard, off of my car. And it's just flapping in the wind. So I got to pull over, and I try to pop it back into place. It doesn't work. And you know what? The first thing that pops in my head is like rockauto.com. I go to rockauto.com. They had it. They had that little plastic fender cover that goes over the wheel on my driver's left side, and $40, super cheap. And I buy it. They sent it to me, and it was easy to change. I saved hundreds of dollars, just not only on the part, the upcharge they would sell me at a chain store or a car dealership for the part, but the cost of labor. I would not have a car for a day and a half probably, because they wouldn't, or maybe they wouldn't even be able to find the part, right? Because there's a shortage of parts. But Rock Auto has such an amazing selection. I bought the part, did it myself, super easy. The rivets were all with the fender. I popped it into place. Boom, car as good as new. My wife thinks I'm amazing. Not really, but my son thought it was pretty cool what I was able to do there. And I was able to find that part at rockauto.com. So why would you choose to spend 50, 100% more for the same parts at a chain store or a car dealership? Go to rockauto.com. They have what you need. Rock Auto's prices are always reliable low for every customer. Do-it-yourselfer, professionals alike, always reliably low prices. Rock Auto is a family business. They've been serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years, and I am a believer, and I've used it, and I was blown away what they had for me and how easy it was to change that part on my car that I probably wouldn't even have tried to change myself if it wasn't for knowing about rockauto.com. So you can go to rockauto.com right now, see all the parts available for your car or truck, right locked on in the How Did You Hear About Us box so they know we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need at rockauto.com. Thanks again, everybody, for making Locked On 49ers your first listen. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast, the biggest stories of the day, plus instant reaction, big game recaps, and the take of the day, available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. All right, Croc, before I tell you, Elijah Mitchell, rookie season, yards per carry, 4.7. What do you think Christian McCaffrey's career yards per carry is?
Well, you said it was close, so I'm going to go with 4.64.
4.6? 4.6 is Christian McCaffrey's, the first selection for the last, 3 or 4 years in your fantasy football leagues at running back. 4.6 yards per carry for his career. Elijah Mitchell was better than that as a rookie. Here we're hold on. Here
McCaffrey
was
would tell you, like, dude, I don't run behind big Trent Williams in this outside zone scheme. That's what McCaffrey would tell you.
Would Christian McCaffrey tell you, like Elijah Mitchell was, there's all these extra yards he's leaving on the table, even though he's got 4.7 yards per carry? Christian McCaffrey's rookie season, he only averaged 3.7 yards per carry and had he rushed for only 435 yards, but he had 80 catches. In his second year, he rushed for 1,098 yards, so about 1,000 yards more than Elijah Mitchell. And he had 5 yards per carry, so a nice little season, and another 107 receptions. So Christian McCaffrey is obviously a different dude and a really good running back and has all the receiving ability on top of it. But, I mean, come on. His first 2 years in the league, it wasn't that much better.
What's his best rushing season?
It was that second year, I think. Let me go back to it. It was his third year. So, yeah, so his third year, McCaffrey's third year was kind of ridiculous. His second year was really good. His third year was 4.8 yards per carry, 1,387 yards rushing, another 1,000 yards receiving on 116 receptions. So he pulled the Roger Craig that year with 1,000 yards rushing, 1,000 yards receiving. So I don't want to compare Elijah Mitchell just because of the receiving stuff, but yards per carry, Elijah Mitchell is a rookie. I mean, he's right there. Like, you don't need more yards per carry than what Elijah Mitchell was pulling off as a rookie. And for a rookie running back,
you know what you need though. What you need is, unlike Christian McCaffrey and what we saw from Elijah Mitchell as a rookie, dude, you got to stay on the field.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's been McCaffrey's biggest. I heard some people talking about top 5 running backs in the NFL, and one person mentioned Christian McCaffrey, and guys were like, he can't stay on the field. And Elijah Mitchell, we know that this is an issue with running backs, including maybe a potential wideback out there. But Elijah Mitchell, he was banged up. And I know I talked to some people that were inside that building, and they were telling me about his ribs. I mean, and this guy, they basically were kind of like taping him up to just, bandage, putting him together to be able to get through a game. And it was crazy because of what I was hearing with how banged up he was. And then Kyle was like, yeah, whatever, we're just going to run you 27 times.
Yeah, I remember that. Some of those games, like, oh, man, I don't think Elijah Mitchell's going to be able to play. It's like, oh, you can play? Okay, here's the ball every single snap. Here you go. But that was the games he did play, was he was going through that. So imagine how bad he was hurt for the games he didn't play.
Well, I don't think he practiced too much over the second half of the season because of some knee injury, and that wasn't even the worst thing. I mean, I think it was the ribs that I heard he was having a really tough time with.
And I don't want to bring up Christian McCaffrey anymore here, except for this. I will say I will not be shocked at all when Christian McCaffrey, because of the money he's making, because he signed that big second contract, gets cut, that Kyle Shanahan loses his mind. It's like, oh, we have to sign this guy, and he becomes the San Francisco 49ers. So maybe it's not a third-round pick next year. It's signing Christian McCaffrey after he gets cut by the Panthers. Yeah.
That's the tough thing with running backs. It's this position where it's not really a premium position. Even if you draft a guy like Christian McCaffrey, who is sweet, you just talked about him having a 1,300+ yard season and another 1,000 yards on top of that, and 116 receptions, right? Like, it doesn't get any better than that from a production standpoint. And even then, the value of him in the sense of, like, money, he's going to be the first guy gone. Like, if they had to choose right now between DJ Reed and Christian McCaffrey, like, they're going to be like, see ya, Christian, because we can get someone in there who's not going to be Christian McCaffrey, but he can be a 1,200-yard rusher, and that's good production, and they'll let him go. So that's a tough thing, guys. Drafting running backs like that, top 10, you don't see it a whole lot because it's hard for them to kind of live up to that. Like, how healthy and how good do they have to be over an extended period of time? You see guys like Adrian Peterson. I mean, it's so rare. I feel like every back now, like, just everybody's getting hurt.
Every back.
A few years ago, Marshawn Lynch. I feel like Marshawn Lynch never missed a game.
Zeke Elliott too. And that's the thing. Derrick Henry. Remember, Derrick Henry's a cyborg. And it was like, man, is this guy going to rush for 2,000 yards, get every carry, 40 carries in a game? It's like, he's a different guy. He's built different. And then last year, started breaking down. And that's probably the beginning of the end. That's it for him. It happens. The attrition rate at running back is 100%. It's crazy. So moving on from Elijah Mitchell, I want to say over, but I'm saying under, and you're saying under as well for 963, just because they drafted.
I'm saying under,
yeah,
because they drafted a guy in the third round, and I don't believe it's just for an insurance policy.
Okay, so we did this with the Trey Lance episode. So does that mean the new rookie running back is going to replace the old rookie running back? I want to talk about Ty Davis-Price versus Elijah Mitchell as a rookie. Are we talking 900 plus yards for Ty Davis-Price as rookie? Or is this going to be a dead split between Ty Davis-Price and Elijah Mitchell? I want to talk wide back. We still got to talk Jeff Wilson. We got to talk Trey Sermon. We got to talk JaMycal Hasty as well next. Let's go wide back really quick. 365 yards. That's not that big a production for what, right? Because we're watching Deebo Samuel do special things. I expected to see like 800 yards rushing, right? It was 365 for Elijah Mitchell or for Deebo Samuel last year running the ball as the wide back. But he really didn't start running the ball until the second half of the season. Even if the 49ers dial back his usage from the second half, but still use him half as much, but for a full season, we're still talking about similar usage. He only carried the ball 59 times. That's not that much. It was the third most carries on the team, second most rushing yards on the team with 395 yards. What do you think the usage is going to be for Deebo? And assuming he signs a deal and comes back, do you think it's going to be part of it where even maybe incentives is part of his contract? Like if he gets, 50 carries, he gets, to whatever more $1 million or something like that. I don't know what that's going to look like and if that'll affect his usage. But I feel like he got used at the end of the season too much because remember, there was one point where he was averaging like 10 yards per carry. And the more he got the ball, the more his yards per carry went down and he started taking a pounding. And at one point I started to say, okay, Kyle, I felt the same about Deebo late in the season as I felt about Trey Lance early in the season. When Trey Lance got the start with the Cardinals, I was like, okay, Kyle, what are you doing? Like QB power over and over again? Like, are you trying to get your rookie quarterback hurt? And guess what? The rookie quarterback got hurt, right? Is that what you're trying to do? And with Deebo, I was like, okay, like the Deebo stuff is cool. Wide back, he's a wide receiver. You hand him the ball, get him outside, get him in space, but hand him the ball behind the quarterback, running straight ahead into 300 pounders. That's just dumb. Like you can't be doing that. So I don't know what the usage is going to look like, but he wasn't doing that the first half of the year. So even if they dial back what they did in the second half of the year, but do it for a full season, it could still kind of look the same over the course of the year, stats wise.
Well, and that's what I was going to say. I just kind of did some quick math using my calculator. And you said he had, 59 carries, right?
Yeah, 59 carries for 365, 6.2 average per carry.
So when you divide 59 carries over 17 games, which I know he also missed the game in there as well last season, but when you divide that over 17 games, it's only 3.4 carries per game. So if you're just telling me, hey, each game he gets 3 carries, even if it's, there might be one that's through the A and B gap, and maybe there's a couple that are outside. Like, okay, I can live with that.
Yeah,
but at some point last season, he was getting like 10 carries in a game, and he's really running. And we saw him late in the playoff game. And you need it, right? I mean, at the end of the day, and most people say, like, get the ball in your best player's hands. And the 49ers definitely did that. Maybe not enough in the championship game against the Rams. But they were just figuring out a different way. Like, just get the ball in his hands. So if we just had to hand it to him, I really liked in the Packers game where they threw that little what do they call it, like Texas route? What do they call that? Where you kind of go out and come back.
Texas route or the circle route, or some people call it an option route because I think there's an option built
into it.
No,
not the option, not the when you run and then you can either go this way or that way, but it's like you kind of flare out, then cut back.
Where you flare out off the tackle and then come back over the middle like a slant?
Yeah.
That's the Texas route, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so doing that, like, I thought that was cool. I mean, that's a mismatch, right? Like, most of the time you're going to get it matched up on linebackers. But Do whatever you have to do to get the ball in his hands, but gosh, like limit the running up the middle. And we saw that, I feel like, in the Dallas Cowboys game. I think right away. Matter of fact, he caught the first pass of the game, but it was called back for something, false start. I forget exactly what it was. And then the very next two plays were him carrying the ball up the middle. And maybe that's just Kyle Shanahan trying to set something up, but you do have Elijah Mitchell. He's an actual running back. Run him up the middle. Like
I'm
those are the
looking at
things where
Deebo's.
Deebo's not going to last very long.
I'm looking at Deebo's yards per carry and his usage. So yeah, it really started to skew up. And in the playoffs, it went up even higher. So in the playoffs for the 3 games, he hadn't had 10 yards. He hadn't had 10 carries in any game during the regular season. But in the first playoff game against Dallas, he carried the ball 10 times that game for 72 yards.
Right.
It was a big game. Then they did it again, 10 carries, but only 39 yards. So only 3.9 yards per carry against the Packers there. And then and only 3.7 yards per carry on 7 carries against the Rams. So it worked a little bit less when teams knew it was coming. And the efficiency definitely went down because there were some games where he had some big plays and some big carries when it was a sneak attack and teams didn't know it was coming. But then he started carrying the ball 8, 9, 10 times per game. And obviously the efficiency is going to go down. So, but like you said,
the efficiency is always also going to go down when the defense, and from what I remember seeing, it was almost like they were challenging the 49ers to actually throw the ball down the field.
Right.
And
yes.
it
So
made it
the box
more difficult against the run. Look at Elijah Mitchell's yardage from that game. It was like abysmal. The run game in general, it just did not work. And why didn't it work? Well, they were playing so many guys in the box.
Yeah, teams didn't trust the pass, and they're playing against the run, especially in 7 degrees or whatever it was against the Packers. So that was a even extreme version of that. But Deebo, 365 yards. All that said, what do you think? Over or under there?
Under. Yeah. And I don't think they're going to have to use him in that role, right? Yeah. Again, we talked about insurance and things like that with Tyler's price. I think he's going to be more than that, but I also think there is an element of getting guys in there that they feel can legitimately get the job done at a high level. And maybe even if it's somebody that brings a different element, it still kind of fills that void of what you were doing with Deebo. Now, he's not Deebo in with how you run him and how you use him or anything like that. They did start doing some inside runs with Deebo Samuel. Ty Davis Price, I don't think it's like, oh, we want somebody that runs the ball like Deebo Samuel. No, but it was, let's get somebody that can run the rock and maybe bring something different to where maybe we don't even have to do as much of whatever we did with Elijah Mitchell running up the middle. Maybe that can kind of preserve his body a little bit. So I'd expect Deebo Samuel's yards and carries to go down drastically.
Yeah, I would too. 3 times 17 is 51, right? So that would be fewer carries. And depending on what his yards per carry is, it would be hard for him to get better than that. And I'm with you. Three carries a game. That's a good number for Deebo. And he shouldn't really be going more than that. He shouldn't be having the
I don't even think he's going to get that. I'm going to put it at 40 carries.
Okay. 40 for the season. So
that's where I
definitely
would set
less.
the over-under.
Definitely under for Deebo. Ty Davis Price. Where do you think he's going to be? Do you think he's going to be the big piece of the pie like Elijah Mitchell was last year? Or do you think he's going to be the small piece of the pie for Elijah Mitchell?
Well, and also we're going to get to Trey Sermon and kind of where he fits into this whole thing. How has he been taking care of his body to kind of take his game to the next level? And we know how. Go ahead.
Croc, guess what Trey Sermon's career yards per carry is in the NFL?
It wasn't bad. Was it like 4.3?
It's the same as Christian McCaffrey's 4.6.
Oh, wow.
He wasn't that bad. Like, I don't know what the deal is with Trey Sermon either. He's a 3rd-round pick. He ran for 4.6 yards per carry, which is not bad at all. It was it's really it's really hard to explain, actually. And look, oh no, sorry. No. I'm sorry. 4.1 yards per carry. I was looking at something else. 4.1 yards per carry. But it was more than 4. It was more than 4 yards per carry, which is not bad at all.
Which is kind of like that threshold.
Yeah, it was better than Jeff Wilson. Jeff Wilson was 3.7 yards per carry. So
Yeah. You just want a guy who's like, just when you look at the statistics on how, efficient you were as a team running the ball, and you want to look and see guys over 4 yards per carry. And once you see that, it's like, how much over, obviously, the closer they get to 5 yards per carry, it's like, man, he was really contributing. But at 4.1, it's like, well, yeah, it's not bad. I think there was just something a little personal going on there. Yeah. Like something off of the field.
They definitely didn't like either the way he was working or the way he was running the plays. And Kyle Shanahan's a stickler for that. Like, if you're not sticking your foot in the ground in the right spot, you're not making the right read, you're not picking up the right blitzer, you're not running the right routes, whatever it is, you're not going to be on the field. And we've seen that with Ayuk. We've seen that with numerous guys. I'm sure it's much more than just like, is this guy a decent runner or not? That's not the question, I don't think, with Trey Sermon.
Pass protection could be an issue.
Yeah, it could be a number of things. And so, but makes me think Trey Sermon could Trey Sermon. How about that real quick? Trey Sermon, he only carried the ball 41 times last year for 167 yards. Would you take the over or under on that? He played 9 games.
I'm going to take the over. I'm going to take the over.
I'm going to take it over on that for sure.
9 games, not even active. 9 games active. Games where he was a healthy scratch. Obviously, we know he had 1 carry against the Philadelphia Eagles and then left that game with a concussion. And even then, he wasn't even like the first running back up when Elijah Mitchell was kind of banged up. So I'd expect him to just get things going and definitely go at the over on his yardage and carries.
So where are you at with Ty Davis-Price? Like, what kind of usage is he going to get? What piece of the pie is he going to get? And really no running back. With the 49ers, I can see why the 49ers wanted to add a running back when I'm looking at their running back stats last year, because if they're not happy with Elijah Mitchell being the true number 1 guy and a bell cow, then he needs somebody else. And if you don't believe that, if you don't want to use Deebo anymore and you don't believe that somebody else is Wilson, Sermon, or Hasty, then you kind of got to add another body to the mix. And that's where Ty Davis-Price fits in.
Yeah. I don't think that his yards per carry is all that great, just because of how they're going to utilize him. I don't know if they're going to utilize him in a way to where he is going to be picking up these chunk yardage plays, right? Like getting outside, things like that. I do believe that he's going to bring an element that offsets what Elijah Mitchell or what they don't want to do with Elijah Mitchell. So I think that inside zone, which is where I felt like he excelled at Florida, we're going to see more of that. But I also think that that's going to limit some of the big play opportunities. And sometimes he's going to run into the middle just to kind of set something up that comes off of that. So I don't even know if they're going to be expecting him to get big yardage. So I'm going to go with like 3.9 yards per carry, right underneath that threshold that I typically would like to see. But I can see about 400 rushing yards. I think he will get attempts and then touchdowns. I think there will be times where they kind of utilize him in that red zone area in short yardage situations too, where they just kind of hammer him in there. I think that'll lessen his average per carry as well. But touchdowns, I mark him right around 5 touchdowns. I think he's going to get like that opportunity, kind of like what we saw from Jeff Wilson, I believe it was in the 2019 season.
Yeah, I kind of feel like Trey Sermon's or Ty Davis-Price's usage could sort of replace what Jeff Wilson and Deebo were doing. Not replace Deebo's usage, because Deebo's different. And you have a numbers game and you bring a wide receiver on the field, and the defense has nickel personnel, and all of a sudden it's 21. So it changes things. It changes the number. So a running back playing running back isn't going to do that. But I just think from a pure carries perspective, I could see Ty Davis-Price taking away, Deebo plus Jeff Wilson sort of usage. And yeah, in that 400-yard range as the second back to Elijah Mitchell, short yardage. So maybe the yards per carry isn't great. And the 49ers weren't good in short yardage last year. So I think that's part of it. And that'll hurt his yards per carry if he's, if he has these inside carries on 4th and 1, 3rd and 2, stuff like that. And so unless he, finds the crease and breaks some runs on those, it's going to be tough for him to have the big yards per carry. But I think he's going to have the second biggest piece of the pie of the running back group, right? But we thought that about Trey Sermon last year. And so I don't know. And Trey Sermon has an opportunity to show up in camp And like I think of it as, from fantasy football perspective. When I am drafting in fantasy football, I go to Kyle Shanahan's depth chart and I draft his third running back in the last round of my fantasy drafts, because that's the guy who profits, right? And who's that guy this year? That's probably Trey Sermon.
Yeah.
So is Trey Sermon the guy this year, post-hype sleeper, baby, that ends up being the dude? I don't know. I have no idea what to think about the 49ers running game. I just know that they're going to run the ball a lot. That's the plan. They're going to run the ball a lot.
The answer to that is no. And the reason why is because I think Kyle Shanahan just likes who he likes and doesn't like who he doesn't like. So there's something about Trey Sermon who I do think would do well. I'm going to take the over on his yards and carries from last season just because it was just so low. But I just don't think Kyle Shanahan likes him.
Real quick, Jeff Wilson, he only had 295 rushing yards last year, 294 rushing yards last year on 79 carries. We go an over-under on that total.
Under.
He might not make the roster, right? How many sort of bigger power backs are the 49ers going to keep? If they're going to keep Sermon, they're going to keep Ty Davis-Price, obviously. So Jeff Wilson, too? Could Trey Sermon be the odd man out? How about this one? JaMycal Hasty, he only had 68 yards last year. Over under on JaMycal Hasty. Does he even make the roster? I got to say under because I don't think he's going to make it.
He was kind of like a third down receiving back, though. So do they continue to kind of keep him in that role?
Yeah.
When Jimmy Garoppolo threw that last no-look behind-the-back interception against the Rams in the championship game, he was throwing to JaMycal Hasty.
Hasty had 23 receptions and 16 carries last year.
I bet that, that's like probably by far the most receptions by a running back.
Okay, so if Hasty doesn't make the team, what running back on the 49ers is good receiving the ball out of the backfield? Like use check and that's it.
Probably Deebo Samuel.
Or Deebo, yeah. Oh, maybe that's the next wrinkle is they put Deebo in the backfield. Everyone's like, oh, wide back, but then he still runs a route instead. So you use Deebo as a running back, but a wide receiver. So it becomes like Bizarro Deebo, where he lines up running back, but plays wide receiver stuff instead of lining up as a wide receiver, plays running back stuff.
Right.
Yeah, okay. Now we're getting to the head of Kyle Shanahan. Now it's all starting to make sense, Croc. I'm glad we were able to talk this out here. I want to thank everybody out there for making Locked On 49ers your first listen every day here. Tons of other great content here on the Locked On Podcast Network, including Croc doing the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast daily. I'm doing the Peacock and Williamson Show, talking about the entire NFL. Croc and I back tomorrow, another Winky Wednesday right here. Locked On 49ers.